friends, and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're gonna bake some bread. You don't think you can do it? Oh yes, you can. It is extremely simple. With the right ingredients, recipe, and materials, you will be enjoying fresh baked bread in no time. Today's recipe comes from the Prairie Homestead Cookbook. I just picked this up off Amazon. This is an incredible book. It's full of from scratch recipes, homesteading tips, guides, and all kinds of wonderful resources, not just for cooking. So I suggest you run out to Amazon, scoop up a copy, find her blog or the Facebook page because there is a ton of wonderful information right at your fingertips. Her recipe is crusty Dutch oven bread, and all you need is 4 ingredients: salt, yeast, some water, and flour, and that's it. So let's get started. All right, guys, step number 1 is take 3 cups of warm water. I pop mine in the microwave for maybe a minute or so and just test it with my finger. You don't want it too hot, you want it nice and warm. To that, you're gonna add 1 teaspoon of your active dry yeast and 1 tablespoon of salt. You're gonna mix this together in the bowl and you're gonna let it sit for a few minutes so it all dissolves and kind of gets nice and ready for the flour. See that? I went ahead and did mine. Now a tip for yeast, I buy mine in like the big, they look like coffee cubes, air dried and all that in the little containers. And I open it up and I put it in a jar and I keep it in the fridge. It helps it to last a little bit longer. You're gonna learn a lot more about yeast and some great information from Nancy. And so yeah, I keep mine in the fridge. So we've got our 3 cups of warm water with 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast and 1 tablespoon of salt. We're gonna let this sit for a few minutes, then we're gonna add the flour and get our dough formed. So come on back. All right, friends, it's been just a couple of minutes and the yeast and salt have dissolved in the bowl. It kind of looks like cloudy water, but that's okay. That's what we want. We want the yeast and the salt to be all dissolved in the nice warm water. The next step is to add in 6 cups of flour. You can use all-purpose, which the recipe calls for, or you can use bread flour. I'm using bread flour. So we're gonna do 1. You wanna make sure they're nice, even, level cups of flour. There's 2. And 3. 4. And we have 5 and 1 more cup. All right, so I also want to point out that at this point, you could season this flour if you wanted to. There have been times where I have put a good palmful of Italian seasoning in here. Maybe you wanted to do a little rosemary bread. Now's the time to add that spice in if you wanted to. Again, with homesteading and homemaking your own food, the possibilities for flavor are endless. Got my wooden spoon here, and we're just gonna mix this together. Let me see if I can mix and give you a nice shot of what it looks like. Okay, there you go. We're gonna mix this together until all the flour is incorporated and it kind of looks like a nice sticky mess. So let's see, I'll show you what it looks like. All right, friends, I have mixed my flour in with my water mixture. Nice sticky dough has formed. You want to make sure you scrape around the edges. You also want to make sure you get down in the bottom because sometimes flour likes to hide out in little pockets at the bottom of the bowl. I've learned that the hard way. So what we're going to do next is the easiest part. I'm going to clean off the spoon. We're going to cover this with a tea towel. I'll put a rubber band around it just to make sure it doesn't fall into the dough because you don't want the towel sticking to the dough. Put it in a corner of your kitchen where it's not going to be messed with for 3 to 5 hours. The yeast is gonna activate, it's gonna make the dough rise, it's gonna double up in size, and it's gonna be beautiful. So let's get that done, and I'll see you in a couple of hours when it's time to bake. 3 to 5 hours, and I just can't help myself. I want to take a peek and see how it's rising. Look, guys. Look at that. It is looking great. I'm gonna let it go for probably another hour and a half. It's 2:35 now, so at about 4 o'clock, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna get the oven preheated, and I'm gonna form these guys into loaves and let them rest again. So meet me back here when it's time to do all that. But it's looking great. Okay, the bread has been resting for a little over 4 hours, and it's looking great. So it's on to the next step. We're gonna preheat the oven to 475 degrees, but we're gonna preheat it with the Dutch oven inside, so the Dutch oven gets nice and hot along with the oven. So, Dutch oven. What kind? What variety? What style? It really doesn't matter. You can get a super expensive one, or you can go to your local thrift store or consignment shop. You'll probably find them everywhere. You just wanna make sure that it's a good cast iron, enamel coated pan. You can see I bake in these all the time. I have parchment paper down in the bottom of them so that the bread doesn't stick. This one I think I got for 20 bucks somewhere. This one I got from my wholesale membership club. It was around during the holidays. It was a steal for like $24.99. Super, super wide variety. You can go with any brand you like. As long as it's a good quality cast iron enamel coated Dutch oven, you're good to go. And I suggest you have one around anyway. It's great not just for baking bread, but for doing roasts and stews and slow cooking and simmering in the oven. I love it. We've got Lodge as well, Lodge cast iron. We'll cook over our fire pit outside in the backyard, and it's great for that kind of stuff. So we're gonna preheat the oven to 475, but we're putting our Dutch ovens inside. All right, so while that's preheating, let's take a look at the dough. I'm so excited. Whoa, look at this. Does yours look like mine? I certainly hope so. All right, put the lids for the Dutch ovens over here. Okay, actually, let's put the lids on the Dutch ovens so that everything is nice and hot. Okay, so lids on the Dutch ovens in the oven while it preheats. All right, I have a spatula and I have a little bench scraper. Love this guy, super useful, like a right-hand man kind of kitchen gadget. I am going to lightly sprinkle the surface that I'm gonna work on with flour. If you dropped a little bit too much flour, you can make a little pile off to the side. From my understanding, this is where people get intimidated, the kneading of the dough and working it and making the loaves. It's really simple, and you just don't want to overthink it. So I'm going to use my spatula. See if I can do it this way so you can see. And I'm just gonna slowly scrape down and let it kind of plop out. There we go. Look at that. So the trick to this dough is that we actually don't want to knead it too much because we want it to be light and airy and have, you know, the little pockets and stuff in it. I'm gonna take a little more flour. I'm gonna sprinkle the top. I'm sorry, it doesn't look like you can get a very good view of what I'm doing. Maybe I can back it up a little bit. Okay, and then here comes the bench scraper. It's gonna help me scrape some flour around the dough. And I'm just gonna work the dough for just a few minutes gently. Just gonna kind of roll it around. Use the bench scraper if it's sticking to the surface. That's what the flour is for. The bench scraper can help to work the flour underneath. But see, I'm just kind of rolling it around. There we go. So now we want to divide this in half because this recipe makes 2 loaves of bread. So we want to make sure it's fairly even. I'm gonna kind of make a little oval here, make like a giant long loaf. And then I'm just gonna eyeball it. And I'm gonna take my bench scraper, I'm gonna cut the whole thing in half. And then I'm gonna take this, and all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fold it around my fingers. And as I fold it around my fingers, I'm gonna twist it around in a circle. See that? I'm forming my loaf. Every once in a while you can set it down, kind of give it one of these numbers to make sure it stays nice and round. But you want the light airy bubbles in it. See the little bubbles, the little pockets? You don't want to knead that out of the bread. So you want to handle it gently. So this guy is in a nice little round circle. And then I'm going to do the same with the other half. I'm just gonna get a little flour on my hand so it doesn't stick. Woo, sticking a little bit. And I'm going to, again, just gently take the dough and I'm just rolling it over on itself. Not getting too aggressive, just gently twisting and folding. I'm taking the sides and I'm folding my fingers underneath to the middle. And when it starts to feel a little sticky, I just put a little bit more flour on my fingers. I'm gonna take this guy down. I'm gonna give him a little circle shake, a little pat. And there we go. We've got two nice looking loaves here. I'm gonna spread the remaining flour out. I'm so sorry, you can't really see. I'm practicing and working on these YouTube videos. You guys are gonna have to give me some tips and tricks down at the bottom to make these YouTube videos good. All right, so I've got my two loaves. They're sitting on a nice floured surface. All right, look at that, aren't they pretty? So then what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the same towel that we had the bowl covered with, and we're just gonna gently place it over the top. The oven is busy preheating. These guys are gonna rest for about 40 to 45 minutes. And then when the oven beeps and the 45 minutes is over for this resting period, we're going to gently and carefully put them inside the Dutch ovens and we'll start the baking process, which sounds difficult, but it's really not. So come on back. We're gonna let these rest. I'll show you how to slash the bread before putting it in the Dutch ovens. And we are like coming into like the bottom of the seventh, you guys. 7th inning stretch. We're working it. We're making bread. And I bet you guys are doing a fantastic job too. So I will see you back here in just a little while. It's time. We've rested for about 45 minutes. The oven is preheated. The Dutch ovens are hot inside. Now it's time to score them, place them in the Dutch ovens, and start baking. So, not quite sure the best way to do this so you can see everything, so bear with me. All right, you want a sharp serrated knife, or even a razor blade works great. What we want to do is we want to score, or basically slash, the top of the bread. When we put this bread in the oven, it's gonna get really hot really fast and it's gonna start to expand. So instead of blowing out a wheel somewhere, we can control how it expands by slashing it. It helps to release some steam and helps to give the bread a little kind of a breaking point to where it can kind of come up and out. So you wanna be really fast. We're just gonna go 1, 2, 3. And again on this one, 1, 2, 3. All right, so I've got my trusty bench scraper. We're going to loosen these guys up that have been sitting on the floured counter. There's 1, and there's 2. Now I'm going to open up my oven. I've got my oven mitts because we're going to take the Dutch oven lids off. And then we're going to slowly place the loaves inside the Dutch ovens. So let's see if I can twist you. You know, if this becomes a regular habit, you guys, I'm gonna have to invest in some photography equipment, I think. All right, are we ready? Open up my oven and whoo, it's hot. I'm pulling out my rack. I've got 2 smoking hot lids here. And take my bench scraper, get my first loaf, and we're gonna plop it right inside the first Dutch oven. And I'm gonna take my second loaf. You know what? If it looks ugly, if you squish it, it's okay. It'll still bake just fine. And what you can do once you get it in your Dutch oven, if you want to put your mittens back on and give your pan a little shake, just to make sure it's sitting on the parchment paper and not stuck to the sides. All right, so let me show you. See, let me flip it. Oh, can't flip it, okay. So there you have it. There's 1 and 2. So now we're going to put the lids back on these guys. Okay. And we're going to push this back in and set a timer for 30 minutes. When 30 minutes is up, we're gonna come back, we're gonna take the lids off, and then we're going to bake them for another 15. So come on back. All right, guys, the big reveal. Got some camera help this time around because I want you to see this as it happens. Look at that, you guys. Here's bread loaf number 2. Now, if you think that's a little too done for you, go closer to 10 minutes. We did 15. But I promise you that as these cool, they'll get nice and chewy on the inside with a nice crust on the outside. So the last thing we're gonna do, keep your oven mitts on, we are going to put these guys on some cooling racks. Now, as tempting as it is to eat them now, you want to let them cool for at least 30 minutes or so before slicing into them. But congratulations, guys. We have officially baked bread. Thank you so much for joining, you guys. And just remember, oh yes, you can.